Welcome to BWI Live. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. I root for you to be happy. I do. I also root for you to be here. And when you get what you want against Kent State, 56-0 at 7 p.m. on a Saturday, I don't blame you for, wanting to go out and enjoy the rest of your day. I hope, though, that the rest of your day does involve this particular show. So I know there's not going to be 1,000 people here like there were for the West Virginia postgame show, but I hope you stuck around through the game to talk about what happened. And really, the most interesting thing about this game to me was the first quarter and the slow start that the Nittany Lions got off to in this game. 7 points in the first half, and everyone was saying that this had to be a blowout and Penn State had to put up historic numbers on a historically bad team, and they eventually got there. 718 yards. You saw, if you're watching like me from your home and you were watching the broadcast, this was the most yards they've ever put up. 409 passing yards, 309 rushing yards. You had 3 different players throw the football. You had 8 players rush the football, and a whole bunch of them caught the ball. So everyone got involved. Everyone got to eat. Everyone got touches. And that's the point. I don't believe, and this is the thing, is my biggest takeaway from this game is Penn State came out in this game and they were treating this like a practice. They were not trying to score a lot of points. They were trying to run a lot of plays in the first half. Because the way you attack this defense, this Kent State defense, is however you want. And they chose in the first half to play a little bit of ball control. A 9-play, 51-yard drive that ended in an interception, a bit of an unlucky situation for Beau Pribula, but also a ball that he threw kind of lasered that. You know, you've seen Drew Aller throw some of those screens where they kind of have to go up and down, and Beau Pribula threw it right, throw it really hard. So that's how that drive ended. Would have ended likely in a touchdown, because all but 2 other drives ended in a touchdown in this game. Or let's just say, not presume anything, a field goal. So Penn State wins 59-0. The next drive, 9 plays, 89 yards, and a touchdown. We came into this game, and James Franklin talked about balance, creating threats, getting players involved. And when Liam Clifford has 3 catches for 64 yards and a touchdown, and Julian Fleming has 2 catches for 60 yards, they're trying to get everybody involved. The play they ran quite a bit in the first half is called mesh. It's a super common play at every level of football. It is a zone and man concept, so you can run it against any defense, and it is pretty reliable, so you can just get yards. But the other thing it does is it has every passing play has a certain amount of, not a certain amount of, there is always I throw here, and then if that's not open, I throw here. And if that's not open, I throw here. Usually 3 progressions and then run. If you've gotten to your 3rd progression and you are still hanging in the pocket, either you've done something wrong or there are no pass rushers. So on this particular play, there is a less specific number 1 target. And I'm speaking in broad generalities here, because football people are going to kill me for that. And I know that. Yes, the rail route coming to the backfield is the number 1 target. You look there first, and then if that's not open. But the point is here, it's not going down the field. It's not vertical attacking safeties, which they did when they decided, okay, let's score some points in the second half or in the second quarter. So they ran a lot of ball control plays so they could get the ball to Liam Clifford, so they could throw to Tyler Warren, so they could throw to Khalil Dinkins. And not just in the first quarter, but throughout, coming in with that particular game plan allows you to run the ball and get these guys involved and establish some credible threats in your offense, so that teams have to prepare for more. Because you think about it, their short game has been non-existent, because they've just been tanking teams down the field, attacking the seams of defenses, and Drew Aller has been money. Drew Aller was money again. He completed 81% of his passes. That's really impressive. So that is my view of this particular game. Now I want to get your view of the game, and I haven't gone to the chat just yet, so I apologize. I do want to get your thoughts here. But that's my opening statement, my state of the game, state of the union. Here is from Bruno. He says, Can you comment on the penalties, especially on defense? Is this something that we should be worried about? Yes and no. Yes, they can't keep lining up offsides. It's not even that they're jumping offsides, because they're doing that too, but they're lining up offsides. That's the one to me that I look at that and I'm like, that is just what? How do I understand you're being aggressive and you want every advantage to attack. And this is actually a thing that I think somebody must have submitted, because Penn State is, if you're lining up and you're pushing the line and literally pushing the line of scrimmage, there are emphasis year after year about what you are emphasizing as a referee, what you're looking for. That might be something that they're now looking for because people have submitted it enough times about the Penn State defense saying, hey, their helmet's in the neutral zone. So I don't know. That's me speculating, me wondering out loud, because it's an insane jump in the number of offsides lined up in the neutral zone. It's not just once, it's multiple times. But the other penalties, I'm struggling to remember them. I know the Javen Williams penalty specifically made James Franklin pretty angry and irritated. I don't have a strong opinion on the penalties, but I do think two things are pretty clear. The penalties, the offsides ones is kind of silly. And then the other thing is the tackling wasn't an issue when you give up 67 yards total. But I'm wondering, again, this is me speculating. I'm not a journalist here. This is me, T. Frank, talking to you. We're friends here on YouTube, taking some artistic liberties to say, Tony Rojas came out of the Bowling Green game. He didn't look like he was healthy when he came back in, and he just hasn't tackled well since then. There's a difference between throwing a shoulder at Garrett Green on the sideline, going for a highlight hit, and it doesn't look like he can actually wrap up at times. So that's something when I go back and I watch the film. And by the way, you want to check out BlueWhiteIllustrated.com this weekend for this film study to know the young players that stood out. We'll talk about Dejon Lane if you want to talk about him today. And the plan, we have, I have a view of what the plan was now that I've seen it, of how they're going to replace KJ Winston, some of the safety rotations and the ideas. A lot of it, by the way, if you read my work this week on Thursday and Friday, and Nate Bauer did a great job covering that from the initial report, our Inside the Den podcast to what we covered post news of KJ Winston. We've been on top of this stuff, and I can give you a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You should subscribe right now, but there's a big game coming up next week, and I'm just going off context clues. Anytime there's a big game, we've done a sale. Keep your eyes peeled. Head on a swivel, everybody. Stephen Light says, thanks for the coverage, T. Frank. Don't overdo the film study this week. I will. I don't have another way of doing or being, so I wish, Stephen, I could do that. But I also feel like in this particular game, I got it done by halftime, because everything that happened after the Omari Evans touchdown is they're just running plays now. They're just running stuff. It's just the playbook. Like, there's no plan anymore. It's okay. They're up 35, whatever it was, 35-0. Obviously, they didn't score any points at that point because they don't have any now. That's something I'm interested to find out of those young players and how they did. By the way, they got in early and often. It's not just in the third quarter. Takari Nelson played the field linebacker position early in the game. Dejon Lane, I think, might have gotten the most snaps of anybody in this game. They weren't kidding around. They wanted to get him as many snaps as possible. He looked a little bit like a freshman. Like he wasn't out of position necessarily, but he was doing this a lot. Like, didn't look like I'm supposed to be here, maybe. But he looked good. Like he looked like a freshman who was out on the field. Looked good. I'm just having some fun here. It's a 59-0 game or 56-0 game. It could have been 65, 114. I don't really care. It's a lot to nothing. And so I think he was okay. The real test is obviously going to come next week, and I think we're going to have a different plan against a Big Ten team than what we saw today. But I didn't hate the plan today. What we talked about this week when it comes to the safety position and how they're going to fix that in the moment against Bowling Green, KJ Winston comes out of the game and they have to adjust immediately. So Jalen Reed goes and plays his position, and that's just how they adjust. This week, they did a little bit more of sharing that responsibility so that Jalen Reed could play the Lion and Zakee Wheatley played a little bit of that boundary safety. And for those that don't know, if you're just here for the first time, hi, I'm a football nerd. I'm T. Frank. I do film analysis. And the boundary safety is the safety that plays on the short side of the field. The college hashes are super far apart, so you get these super long and super short, generally, ways that the field is broken up on each play. So short side of the field is the weak side linebacker or the will, the boundary safety, and then the field linebacker or Sam, and then the field safety is, or free safety. I think of it more as the free safety because you're involved in the run a little bit less. Those are the positions we're talking about here within this defense. And KJ Winston played that boundary role, played a lot of run defense. He was a key run defender there. So now they go into a game where they've played a little bit of each of those guys at that kind of apex role right over the top of the box. Veteran run defender, play some man coverage in the slot. I think Zakee Wheatley can hold that down pretty well. Overall, each guy has individual strengths and weaknesses, as do we all, right? So he's going to be more in the coverage role. Jalen Reed, I think, is pretty well balanced. He can do a little bit of everything. Neither of those guys have the explosive, raw power and strength of a KJ Winston. That's going to be interesting this next week against Illinois. And if we want to pivot this into a postgame show previewing Illinois, I have watched Illinois, so we can do that. But I do want to go through this game because there's a couple more things. If you've got any questions, you got anything you want to talk about, anybody that you saw that you want to talk about here in this game, we can do that as well. Lee W says Liam Clifford had a very nice game. He did. And this is kind of the conversation about Liam Clifford that we had preseason of this is kind of what we were expecting. Underneath catches, catch and run opportunities. And then to me, what I was expecting is those attacking the seam sort of plays. That's what he can bring to the table. I still think he's not 100%. The Liam Clifford I saw at times last year is a little bit faster than this. So if you're not 100%, you're at 90%. Like it's not that big of a difference, but he is working. I think he is still at the very tail end of working his way back off whatever injury he was coming off of. But 3 catches for 64 yards, great hands and concentration at a contested catch for a touchdown. And Drew Aller was dealing in this game. Couple of misses, but he completed 81% of his passes. And this is the problem, guys. I want to say this, and I want to say this with conviction. And then I go West Virginia, Bowling Green, Kent State. And so I want to say if he plays like this the rest of the year, but I just want to say he's going to go to the draft. Like this is a first round quarterback, the way he's operating, the way he's processing, the way he's throwing under pressure, the good decisions he's making on almost every play. This is the stuff I was waiting 3 years to see. Honestly, this is the thing I've been waiting for to watch since Trace McSorley. And no disrespect to Sean Clifford, but we kind of learned what he was at a certain point, and then he became that player. He was kind of static in that. And I'm curious to know rewind the clock, alternate universe, Marvel timeline, the multiverse is terrible. But if you put Sean Clifford into this offense, he might look like a better quarterback. I don't know. All that aside, Drew Aller's awesome, and I love him in this offense, and it is very good. He is getting to a point of being very aggressive with the football. And honestly, I have to say, I think it was his first or second pass where he almost throws the interception to Trey Wallace on the outside route. He had Tyler Warren up the middle for an explosive play. I don't know if it's a touchdown, but it was an explosive play. They got the coverage rotation to take a shot, and he decided to throw the ball to the comeback route on the outside, the shorter route to Trey Wallace. And to me, that kind of set off an alarm bell because he's been taking the big play anytime it's there, and it's been there all year. So that kind of leads me back to, I think the point of this game was to get everybody involved and to get everyone touches. Now, the one that's interesting is Trey Wallace. He was either targeted 4 or 5 times, only 3 catches for 29 yards. That, I think, is the most surprising thing of the last 2 games is that he has not been overly involved. He has not been a guy he's not been a guy that's been a focal point in the offense. And I find that interesting. And I'm not saying that it is It's not that they're not targeting him. It's not that he's not a part of the plan, but it just seems like an area where he came out so strong in that game against West Virginia, and then we haven't seen that since then. And I'm curious if just generally, what's up with that? I don't necessarily know. And I have to go back and look at, like, the problem is, like, the targets are working, the structure of the offense. They're attacking the middle of the field quite a bit. They're attacking the seams, and he's an outside receiver. So I just wonder if that's maybe a part of this conversation. Adam R says Drew played in control and professionally while still staying aggressive. Yes, Adam R, you nailed it. That is a rare combination to be able to ride that line. Jay says, is Grunk injured, or do they feel it's more important to get Beau reps? It's not much of I'm not much a fan of taking the ball out of Drew's hands. Okay, so those are two thoughts, I think, here. What you're saying is the Beau Pribula interception and kind of disrupting the offensive drive and not taking the ball out of Drew's hands. I agree, especially when he's playing so well. And yes, I do think they just want to get Beau reps. I do think that's very important. I also think that when we saw him operate this game, 6 of 9 for 83 yards, a touchdown, and then how many carries? 5 for 45. But a lot of that is there were some scrambles in there. I don't want to put this on him right now. I'll say it this way. What I'm going to go look for is on those plays where he had the ball in his hands, he's dropped back in the pocket and decides to run. What was he looking at? Because last year, everyone kept telling me they don't trust Beau to throw the football. I'm like, they called passing plays and Beau decided to run. If you have an option to run or pass and you're Beau Pribula and you decide to run, that tells me what you prefer to do. Drew Aller prefers to throw the football, and when he has the option to run, he will run. A good touchdown run, by the way, in that option situation. I did not get to that play to break it down, but I did like that he was able to. I obviously watched it live. I just don't know the details of that play. I liked that there was some sort of option there, and it didn't work. It was a cluster. They're running, from what I remember, they were running it into the boundary, so the short side of the field. It's a compressed area. And it just, whatever the design of the play was, it clearly didn't look right. I could tell just looking at it, like, oh, that beefed up. And Drew just kept calm, to Adam R's point, and then ran the ball in himself for the score. So the fact that they scored at the 2-minute warning and then decided they wanted the ball back to score again, and then scored again to start the third quarter, that's, to me, like, that's indicative of the plan was, and I'm just going to say this again because it's what I'm going with today. That was the plan. Run a lot of plays, didn't necessarily care about the points right away, and then they got to the points. Now, the reason they could do whatever they wanted in this game is because the other team did not have a quarterback after the second play. Because their starting quarterback, and I forget his name, Devin Kargman, he's their passing quarterback. And J.D. Sherrod, the guy that we saw for a good bit of the game, he is their Beau Pribula. When he's in the game, at least against Tennessee, he was only a running threat. He only really ran the football. So they were left without a quarterback that could throw the football after the second play of the game. So let's talk about the defense, and we'll get to today our defensive player of the game. As always, the defensive player of the game brought to you by State College criminal defense attorney Matt McClanahan of McClanahan Law Firm. It's funny. I met Matt at an event downtown in State College a few months ago, and I introduced myself, and he's like, I know who you are. And I'm like, I always am thrown by that. And we had a great conversation. One thing leads to another. He's a huge football fan. He texted me today after the game, and he was saying his prediction was 77-0. And he said that the yardage, 717 yards, is more indicative of his pick instead of the 77-0, which he did. I have the evidence. He did put that in an email. He did tell me that before the game. So for more information, by the way, mattmlaw.com. He was there at the game today, so I know he enjoyed what turned out to be a beautiful day. You know, like there was some rain, and then it did that thing that it does here in Happy Valley where the mountains basically split it, and the rain went one way or the other, and The mountains do weird things to the weather here. Anyway, today's defensive player of the game is Abdul Carter. Holy cow, did he have a good game. And finally, he had those impact plays that everyone wants to see all the way to the end of the game when Anthony Specca got 5 tackles to end the game. Carter was the leading tackle getter up until the fourth quarter, which tells you exactly what happened because they had like 43 people that were on the field on defense. He had 2 solo tackles, a sack, and a tackle and a half for loss. Right behind him, though, was Zane Durant. Check out my Twitter, at Thomas Frankar. You can see it here on the YouTube channel, or at Thomas Frankar if you're listening on the podcast. I put up a couple of highlights from Zane Durant in my timeline of him just destroying a couple of plays. He is unblockable. And like, it's not that it's Penn State. He's been doing that all year long. The thing is, teams just aren't letting him tackle the quarterback with the football in their hand. He's gotten 1 sack this year, but he's gotten a lot of really impressive pressures and quick pressures. And, he's been making it a nightmare for guys on the interior to try and block him. So defensive player of the game, Abdul Carter. Co-defensive player of the game, or second. What do they do in hockey where they have the star rating system? You got star 1, 2, 3. I only know like that. So we'll go with Abdul Carter as the star of the game, and the second star of the game is Zane Durant. And again, the defensive line is going to have to pick up some stuff for the rest of the team coming into this new phase of the year, where the defense is going to look a little bit different. There might be you might need to wallpaper over some whoopsies from the secondary with a freshman playing. Bruno is back. He says, oh, this is just nice. He says, thanks, T. Frank. Thanks to all you guys on the board during the game. Yeah, if you want to join us, you want to join Bruno, which it looks like Bruno in his photo here is at a football game. Looks like he's at the Nittany Lions game sometime at Beaver Stadium. You can join BlueWhiteIllustrated.com right now. I want you to join right now, and I want you to join for the year. But if you're listening to this, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, 2 months for $1, code PSU1. There's a big game coming up. It's a primetime game. We're going to have more deals. We're going to have more opportunities. But if you want to get in right now, use that promo code, and it'll get you 9, 10, 11. It'll get you to the end of the Penn State football season. Basically, you're going to get to Thanksgiving for just $1 to get all the film analysis, the breakdown, the breaking news, our insider intel, our podcasts, wrestling, football, everything. It's a great place to be if you love Penn State football and basketball. We even had a basketball news and note the other day. Ryan says, was the tackling as suspect as I think? Front 7 on defense wouldn't hold up versus Michigan and Ohio State based on what I saw. Ryan, it wasn't great. I think it's not widespread. I think it is specifically that Tony Rojas is struggling to tackle right now. And he played some middle linebacker today. It was interesting. There was one drive, and I'm not always 100% right on these things. And I know that there are certain offensive structures that can make guys flip positions from here and there sometimes, I think. Because on the same drive, Tony Rojas and Tamir Robinson, redshirt freshman Tamir Robinson, got in the game. Looked pretty good. Busted one run gap, but overall looked pretty good. They kept flipping. And it was annoying because I was like, okay, the Tamir's in at middle linebacker. I really like that. He can grow into being a throwback middle linebacker. He's got vulture length. Like, his arms are gigantic. He's got like 35-inch arms. He's 230 and looks skinny. And that's a Mike linebacker that can be huge. Tony Rojas, super athletic. He's struggling right now to wrap. And so that's my biggest concern. Part of the problem, Ryan, was they kept blowing things up into the backfield to the point where Zane Durant is at the mesh point. And at that point, I don't think he knows who has the football. So there's a little bit of like Three Stooges aspect of you're so far into the backfield that you don't have time to have vision on where the football is. So there were some shenanigans of broken plays and guys getting outside. There was one play where the quarterback kept the ball on a QB keeper, but it was on a zone drop. So you're blitzing from one side and Dani Dennis-Sutton is dropping into coverage. It's hard to have the edge. It's hard to be a defensive contained player when you're dropping into coverage. So the offense just exploited that weakness and found some rushing yards. There was a lot of falling forward, though. And I guess, Ryan, I don't want to come on here and hammer the same points home again, but Tyler Elsdon has struggled to tackle for a couple of years. This is not new. So That also was a thing today. Dom DeLuca is a good football player. He is what he is. Those guys tend to tackle the football player but allow additional yardage. So the linebackers haven't been great so far. And I think that is something you will have to watch going forward. I don't want to always go, well, Michigan and Ohio State, this and that. Maybe. Yeah, sure. Like that is a possibility. But if those guys play well and are in their gaps and are disciplined, I thought it was a much better game from Dom DeLuca today. He was a little more disciplined in his coverages. He was a little more disciplined. He also didn't play a ton of snaps, but he looked better overall than he was for most of the last two games. David Greeter says, far too gimmicky at times, but can't argue with the results. Defense still needs to get better. Tackling isn't as good as it needs to be. There's your summation from David Greeter. David, glad to have you back here on the BWI Live Show, regular here over the last couple of years. This conversation also happened on the message board thread during the game that too gimmicky. I tried to prepare you guys for this. I tried to tell you this was coming. This is Andy Kotelnicki. And I'm telling you, there were things they could have done in this game they just didn't need to get back to. There were plays for Tyler Warren that were dialed up that I've seen them run at Kansas that he can do that they haven't done yet. I'm so glad they finally ran the Wildcat with Warren under center, because that was like the first thing we saw during training camp, the very first day of training camp, is they ran that. And I'm like, oh, so anyone can run the football, huh? Anybody will be under center. And as a guys, did you know that Tyler Warren is a high school quarterback? Drink. Yeah, so he threw a touchdown pass. Isn't that fun, though? Like, David, isn't that fun? I thought that was fun. I mean, it is a natural iteration of these plays where the ball snaps to a player who receives it, and that player is the quarterback on that play. So instead of having a running back who has never thrown a pass in his life, you have a guy like Tyler Warren who at least has thrown a pass in his life. And so I don't want them to make that the whole offense, but they're not. It was two plays. And those two plays resulted in 17 yards for a touchdown and 16 yards on a run. It's Kent State, I understand. But it is fun. I thought it was fun. I don't have any problem with that. Because what's the other option? To just run it up the middle on every play, and then you get 9 yards or you get 4 yards based on the blocking, and you don't do anything to stress the defense or put things in the mind of future defensive coordinators that they have to be prepared for, because now you have a Wildcat package for a backup quarterback, a running back, and a tight end, plus the quarterback can line up anywhere, and they might do a lateral at some point so he can throw to Amari Evans, who's going to be 70 yards down the field because he's super fast and nobody can cover him. Those are the ghosts you can chase in this offense now. That's the point. That's the point. They still have their base plays. These are all the same plays. I want to take credit for this, and it's not how it goes. But I asked the question that got the answer about the blizzard. Gosh, this feels terrible. No one cares. I'm going to move on. But anyway, that's the thing. That's the whole point of this offense is it's the same play dressed up in a bunch of different ways to create different conflicts and confusion and trepidation in the defense, resulting in explosive plays. So that leads me to another thing I wanted to talk about here on the show, which is Amari Evans. Bad defenses. Preamble. These are bad defenses they're playing right now. Amari Evans has 100 yards in 2 of the 3 games. If we're talking about where's the number one wide receiver, it's Amari Evans. He could have had 100 yards in every single game so far this year. He could have like almost 500 yards if he catches that to 2 of those passes that were for 18 or 20, I think 20 yards and then 54 yards. Like there's another 60 yards on top of what he already has. He's the number one receiver in this offense. And it's not just that he's got the most yards. They're designing these plays for him, and he's doing things that I really like. So one of the plays that really started the explosive plays drive was they ran a particular, I think it was just another variant of mesh, which is, again, that short play. Everyone's within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, and they stop and turn around. Drew Aller gets pressure. He navigates the pocket. He's about to crossed the line of scrimmage, and Amari Evans did the thing he's supposed to do, which is go deep. When the quarterback scrambles, find the open zone, and his job was to go deep. He got behind the coverage, which is looking at the quarterback. That's savvy football play from a guy who runs in the 4.3s. I don't know where, but I know he runs in the 4.3s. And then they finally decided, okay, we're going to take a shot against this defense. So they line him up. I think they lined up in the slot again. He runs a post. He gets a touchdown. It's almost like he runs a post. He gets a touchdown. Is the play. Like that's just, they call the touchdown play, Andy. Just call the touchdown play. And then they do. I don't know what's going on in the chat here. We're talking about Alabama. What's going on? Andy's talking about, tell me you just talked Bama. Yeah, okay. We're let's not do that. We're going to move on to something else. Sorry, that got me distracted here. What else in this game? Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. Nick Singleton is a complete running back. He is doing all of the things very well. I'm going to start with the thing that you didn't notice and you probably don't necessarily care about, but I know his teammates do. And this is something James Franklin or somebody else might mention at some point. He blew some dudes up as a lead blocker for Katron Allen and for it might have been for Tyler Warren or for Liam Clifford, one of the non-quarterbacks that ran the ball, where he's the lead blocker. He gets a lot of help from his offense, right? The running back can't do anything if the offensive line doesn't block and if the receivers don't block. And that's a dude paying it forward, who as soon as he's the fullback in the situation, the dude acts like a fullback and hits people. And not only that, accelerates into the hit. So that's some really cool stuff to see from him. That is a non-touch play. I need to look at his pass blocking. I don't want to go over the top and say he's also a great pass blocker, but I know that's improved. His receiving is improved. We talk about that. He's a legitimate receiving threat you have to take account for. And then 11 carries for 81 yards and 7.1 or 7.4. And I know I'm just throwing a bunch of stats at you, but averaging almost 8 yards a carry is great, which is lower than his season average of 9. So kind of an underperforming game, not going for 100 yards. They did try to pad everybody's stats, though, because Allen and Singleton were in the game much later than some of the other players, trying to get them both around 100 yards. But they finished with 22 carries between the two of them. I just think that Nick right now has distanced himself as the best running back in the backfield. And you still want to have Katron Allen involved. Katron Allen started the game today. And this is not anything dramatic. They probably go every other, or they have some sort of way in practice they decide who's the starter. But they both got 11 carries. They made sure that these guys are both involved. And it's not dramatic here. Katron Allen's long is 13 yards. Nick Singleton's today was 18. But the way Nick is running is different. He's the guy maximizing the plays right now. And Katron Allen is maximizing the plays within the scope of what he is. But Nick is just bigger, faster, stronger than everybody. Not just Katron, everybody. So, once they get into Big Ten play, I don't know how that's going to... They're going to continue to get both of these guys involved. And that's probably the right thing, because you don't want to lean too much on Singleton in any one game. But that's the guy I'm looking for. When he's on the field, I feel like plays are going to happen. Also, Katron has gotten very unlucky so far this year. Calling all the touchdown plays for Amari. They call all the plays where the offensive linemen forget to block players for Katron Allen. There's one play, and again, go to bluewhiteillustrated.com on the message board thread for the in-game thread. I pointed out where Salim Wormley and Nick Dawkins, both on the same play, on the backside of a run, don't block their guy. I was wondering where all of the Kent State players were coming from. Like they were copying and pasting on the screen somewhere and duplicating, but those guys on the backside of that run on that play didn't block either of their guys. So that was a bit of an issue for Katron. He's had some of those where he gets a run call and then there's a safety in the hole, kind of like last year, or there's a missed block. There was a big run he was going to have coming out of the goal line. Drew Shelton falls off his front side block, which the job is, if the microphone is the blocker, his job is keep the guy on this side. He has to stay on this side of you. And if you can expand the hole, if you can push him to the sideline, that's great. But just keep him on that side. And what did he not do? He did not keep him on that side. And the guy dove in for a 2-yard tackle. And if that hadn't happened, Katron Allen had JB Nelson didn't have anybody block on the play. So he basically had a 340-pound lead blocker who was looking for somebody to hit. And one guy falling off their block leads Katron to get a run of 2 yards. I will say, Nick has been in similar situations, and he's running through those better right now. And this comes back to the fact that Katron was not in spring practice. And I think that he has been, I have this long held philosophy that if you're rehabbing, you're not weight training. You're not getting bigger, faster, stronger. You are trying to get back to where you were before, or some facsimile of that. And if you are not able to put in the work in February and March and April, and if you have to start late in the year lifting and the grind of getting bigger and stronger, if you've never tried to do that before, it just takes time. Football on a long scale, from the mental side of things and the physical side of things. Yeah, Luke Reynolds is 18 pounds heavier, whatever he is. He's 248 now, and he probably got here like 235. But he started that process in January. And if he hadn't been there stacking day after day after day after day after day because he was injured, then you don't get to be 248 by September. And so I think that's what Katron is dealing with right now, because he does not look as strong through contact. He was untackleable last season. So I do think he's playing with something right now. And I kind of feel the same way about Tony Rojas, but he also might just not be an adept tackler yet. And I don't want to just brush off because I think he's great. He needs to tackle better. A. Campbell says 7-7 versus Michigan, 2-10 versus Ohio State in the last 14. Not the same history. Please pass it on to the national media. Good work, T. Frank. What are we saying here? Oh, yeah. Okay, I get what you're saying. Michigan is a much more even series. That's correct. But the point is, Michigan accelerated over the last 3 years. So the recent history of the last 3 are 0-3, right? So it's yes. If you want to go over the last, number of years, give the full history. Michigan is a recent. They're in a recently in that category as well. But that's what a narrative is, right? That's the problem with a narrative, is a story that we tell to make things make sense. So if you want to tell the story of Penn State is 3rd in the Big Ten, which they are, empirically they are, then you will cite it the way it is cited, because that is the strongest evidence. Even though the real story is, if you broaden the picture, Penn State and Michigan were 2A and 2B for most of the time, but Penn State has never made that journey to the top. Michigan did, so therefore they do have the right to be ranked as 2 in the Big Ten. I agree with what you're saying. The context of the full story is very different, and we'll see what happens after this. If what we're doing in the chat is complaining about that, then this game was better than I thought, because we're just going back to the stuff that we've been talking about for the last 8 years. So let's talk about Illinois, I guess. Let's move on. Let's pivot to come talk about the next game coming onto the schedule, a primetime clash with the most likely top 20 Illinois Fighting Illini coming to the stadium to battle the Penn State Nittany Lions, who are home again. Of course, I'm going to give you all of our promotional stuff right now, and then we'll talk about the game. Of course, Monday, James Franklin's press conference previewing the game. That starts the week off at noon on that day. We're gonna have to wrap up everything with Kent State before then, and then move on to talk about how Illinois is a better team than last year in some areas and not quite as good in other areas. A couple of things that jump out to me after watching them earlier this year against Kansas, and then I want to watch more. I want to go back and watch things from yesterday from that game against Nebraska. Luke Altmaier, start with the quarterback, is not as good as Drew Aller. Just gonna say that now, so that we don't have to have a conversation about it later. Or if we do, I'll just say, hey, we talked about that on Saturday evening. He is improved. He's a good quarterback. And when you give him, this is the difference in the two quarterbacks and what I have been craving to see from a quarterback every time I turn on the film, whether it's Penn State or elsewhere. When the first read is cloudy or if the first read is gone. So the quarterback takes the ball. He has to look to one part of the play. That's where I'm supposed to go with the ball. If it's not there, what happens next? And most college quarterbacks do not have the mental capacity to continue with the play. Because here's the thing, most humans on the planet don't. There are not 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL that are great at this. So Luke Altmaier is a much improved college quarterback. He's got a good arm. He's got great chemistry with his receivers. They have a back shoulder game that can cause Penn State problems. And this is my concern about the game coming up. If Penn State plays 5-man pressures and man coverage, it's a ball game. Luke Altmaier can operate in that environment. He can pick his favorite target. He can pick the leverage he wants. He can pick the route that he thinks will be open, and they will move the football. But if Penn State takes away his first read, what happens next? That is the ball game to me, because I know what happens when Drew Aller's first read is taken away. He has improved to the point that he will make a good decision, whether it's running the football, whether it's getting rid of the football, or finding a guy by extending the play. That's the thing I think you should be most excited about. A lot of these big plays that you've seen this year have been Aller extending the play, moving through a muddy pocket, because the offensive line is going to get a real test next week. I think that's the biggest concern for the season is the offensive line right now. Secondary or not secondary, the Penn State offensive line has to open up holes in the run game, and this defensive line for Illinois is strong. I don't know that there's an NFL first-round draft pick pass rusher like Penn State has, but there's a couple of dudes that are going to play in the NFL. Those edge defenders, I think it's 9 and 17, it might be, for Illinois. Both of their edge defenders are big, strong kids that can hold the point of attack, set the edge in the run game, and push things back inside. And then they don't have a Johnny Newton on the inside. They don't have a Jazon Newton, but they got some big, strong guys in the middle. I do think if there's one area where Penn State will have an opportunity, it is in the middle, because Venga Ioane is not messing around this year. We don't talk about guards. We just don't talk about guards. He's throwing dudes out of the club left and right this year. He is on a mission as an offensive lineman, and I'm here for it. This is what you were hoping for when he committed in 2022, I think it was. Yeah, it's got to be 2022 at this point. He's really good. He is all of that 349 pounds, and last year he was thinking, and he wasn't moving his feet as much as he should. He's not thinking anymore. He knows this offense. They're letting him play fast. So if Penn State's going to win next week, they got to get that big guy moving. But I do think Penn State will have the opportunity to run the football, but it will be a for real test against Illinois, and something that I'm interested to see how that offensive line responds, because we haven't seen anybody really get good pressure on Drew Aller. You've gotten pressure on Aller, and he threw a ball off his back foot, flat-footed, and almost hit Trey Wallace in the end zone. It was at least a decent attempt for Emmers. I'm not going to respond to that. So don't know what you're talking. Honestly, I don't know what you're talking about. Some of those words in that sentence don't make any sense to me, but appreciate you donating to the channel. But we're not going to be talking about that on the show. They're going to have their first test that I think is going to tell us whether or not these tackles are going to hold up in the long term during this Big Ten season, because they're going to face some good defensive linemen, better than what they'll see this coming weekend against Illinois. But this is the first big boy test for a defense. And like Penn State, Illinois plays tight press man coverage, aggressive pressure. Now, what they did last year is they played a lot of cover 2 on third down. So they would give you man coverage, and then they would hit you with a twist. And Aller struggled to process that. Aller is not struggling to process stuff. So if he struggles in this game, my anticipation is because he will be under pressure that he cannot avoid, or they are getting the kind of pressure on him that does not allow him to throw the football when he's extending the play. That's going to be their game. And I think there's some line games you can do. I am not confident in Drew Shelton and Nick Dawkins after today. I don't think Nick had a particularly great game. Drew has struggled this year at times in pass protection. He has struggled sometimes in the run game. He runs hot and cold in the run game. Sometimes he'll dominate a guy. He'll wash out the left side of the line. And then sometimes he falls off his blocks, like we talked about earlier. So those are the pain points I'm looking for in this game. And then Anthony Donko on that right side. Is he going to be able to hold up? There were some pretty ugly blocks that were effective today, but you get ugly blocks against a Big Ten edge defender, and there's some things that can happen in that game from that perspective that might derail a passing attack that is trying to attack downfield. But I think working on the short game today, pulling out the I wish I knew golf. Your pitching wedge instead of just hitting drivers. Like Andy Koldnicki can go to Topgolf and he can hit drivers all day. They've proven they can hit the long ball. This offense needs to consistently hit some of those mid-tier throws. They need to hit some of those short catch and run throws. Tyler Warren's been great in that, but everyone knows that's coming. So now Liam Clifford has to get in and have some of those catch and run plays. Julian Fleming has to have some of those middle of the field. What he did today is exactly what I was expecting from Julian Fleming all year long. He's fast enough to get 20 yards down the field on a deep dig and catch the football. He's fast enough to do that, or 15, whatever it is. He's not going to be running the deep overs that they wanted him to run at Ohio State in Ryan Day's offense. He's just not fast enough to do that. But he is fast enough to get open in a middle zone and find the soft spot, and Drew Aller can find him, and he'll catch the football. So when we get into this matchup next week, Amari Evans has to play with some physicality through contact. That has been his kryptonite. He hasn't seen that since really that first game against West Virginia. These last two teams have been very zone heavy, very too high quarters, rotate to some cover three, but playing really off, trying to keep a lid on everything. So that is an area where I think we're going to see some real test for Penn State's number one wide receiver right now, who is Amari Evans, which I did not have on September 20. I did not think on September 21st, 2024, I'd be saying, yeah, the number one wide receiver is the guy that I didn't know if he could do it. And by it, I mean the receiver position. So there's some really good stuff here. And there's some interesting, we're going to learn some stuff about Penn State. But overall, in this game upcoming, and I know that I've talked about both sides of the ball here and there, pinballing off all of these thoughts. But there's a lot of things to learn. The strength of this team that they're facing last year, Illinois, it was the front five, really the front five. It was the defensive line all the way across. The nature and the personality of this Illinois defense is the coverage unit this year. I'm sorry. I'm trying to talk and I'm trying to read the chat at the same time because I'm like, ask me some question, guys. You know, I usually like to go an hour. I shot my one bullet talking about what they want to do today, getting everybody the ball and running a lot of plays in the first 10 minutes. So I need some guys. There's an upset alert with Mizzou in the chat. I saw that earlier. Jay says, what do you think of Tom Allen being in the booth? I thought that was interesting. We didn't talk about that. We didn't discuss that. And then they show a shot of him being in the booth. I think generally I'm for it because you just get a better view of what the offense is doing from that angle. It's different than being told, and it's different than being seeing photos or videos of it after the fact. You can get that real-time information going directly. There's no intermediary. There's no, hey, we need to get the video. There is your eyeballs decode the information, your brain sees it, and then you can adjust, as opposed to having to wait. So I think that just generally coordinators being in the booth is a good thing. And however they're doing the communication right now, I think worked pretty well. By the way, check out our post-game content on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. We're going to have James Franklin's press conference. It may be up right now. Usually takes a little bit longer, so it's usually after the show. But Franklin will speak, and we'll have our instant analysis from the guys at the stadium, the things that I missed, the things that they saw. will have their thoughts in instant analysis as well. And maybe Drew Aller, one of the players, depending on what they're able to get in the press room. So make sure you check out all of that stuff. Yeah, this is something we probably should have talked about. Emery's says Cam Wallace's injury looked bad. They showed a video of him being carted into the locker room. That's a huge bummer. Kid who worked really hard to be in the position he's in, looked really good. Now it's, you don't want to get too far ahead of things, but it did not look good the way he was trying to walk off the field and then be carried off by his teammates. So this is what we talked about. If you're going to run 2 running backs and you're going to have Katron Allen, Nick Singleton out there together, you need to have a depth and a stable of running backs so that when attrition happens, you're able to put more guys in. And now that we're into week 5, game 4, you're hoping Quentin Martin's a little more prepared. I think you saw he's not there at the same level that Cam Wallace was. Hopefully Cam Wallace is not a long-term injury for his sake. Hopefully he can come back and be healthy and be productive. And they're going to need more than the top 2 running backs over the long course of this season. And that was the one bummer. I agree. There were some, so just a behind the scenes thing here. I have to throw a dart with my eyes closed as to what time to start this show based on when the game ends. And you have a general idea, right? Of like, it's a 3.5 hour game. So you kind of ballpark like, all right, 3:30, let's do 6:45. And we were on target for that. We were on time. We were going to make 6:45. And then everyone got injured. The Kent State player who got bent backwards by his own teammate. By the way, spines are a miracle. They're amazing. I don't know how he walked away from that. I am so glad he did. That was horrifying and that was terrifying to watch. But when he just walks away from that, when he was basically folded the wrong way, whew. Yeah. But yeah, Cam Wallace's injury, that stinks a whole lot. Brett says, came to the show late, but Max Granville was fun to watch. Might need an impromptu whiteout next week. It'll be the best test. Yep. You have to make these decisions before the season starts, and you don't necessarily know who's going to be good. You don't know if Illinois is going to reload. You feel good about the name of Washington and the opportunity to play a new team. I think it was still the right decision of the newness factor is going to be interesting. Plus, there's an opportunity at that point in the year that the game still means a lot. The push for a playoff spot. So I wouldn't say they made a terrible decision, but yeah, you would love for the whiteout to be next week in a game that is very meaningful against a quality opponent. Max Granville, not blocking him, again, an interesting choice. I said on the tailgate show, there's things in this offense that don't make a whole lot of sense to me. And I don't want to destroy like the offensive coordinator who's on his 3rd string quarterback. Oh, I can't even imagine what that is like to have to okay, we still have to play 45 minutes of football. And I'm on my 3rd quarterback who probably got 4 reps all week. Maybe, probably not though. He probably didn't get any reps with the starting unit. And so he's running a play that the other guy knows he's got to get the ball out in time because there's an unblocked defender coming because of whether it was an RPO or whatever it was. They just didn't block a defensive end that is explosively fast, that runs like track fast. So that was a decision and would have been a very fun first stat to collect to be a sack fumble that was returned for a touchdown. But yeah, be very excited about Max Granville in the future. If you think he looks like Chop Robinson, he does look like Chop Robinson. I know Jalen Harvey's wearing 44, but the way he moves, the explosiveness, even the frame, he kind of looks like Chop Robinson. So I was very excited to see him. And he was here on the show. I always like guys who come on the show who are nice enough to give me a little bit of time. So I'm always happy when they do well. Steven says, T-Frank, who went downstairs when Tom Allen went upstairs? Steven, I apologize that I don't have these answers because I was not aware that Tom Allen went upstairs. Full transparency. That was not something that we talked about this week. It was not something that might have been a change they made with their defensive communication because of what happened in the Bowling Green game and how all of that went through. But I don't necessarily know. So I wish I could answer that question for you. Kevin Chandler. Kevin Chandler is here all the time. He is probably the number one commenter on our videos. So, Kevin, I just want to know, I see you. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for always participating in our channel. He says, Tyler Warren is by far the best damn tight end in America, USA. Yeah, he's probably the best tight end overall so far that I've seen at Penn State, going back to Mike Gesicki. Like the James Franklin era is really when I started covering Penn State football full time as a big boy. So I would say he's the best tight end I've watched at Penn State. And obviously there's been some pretty good ones, but there's been nobody who blocks like him and catches like him and does the thing that I've wanted from a tight end who is 6'5", 260, which is to truck some dudes. Like there have been some guys who are big that have come through that position. They've been great receivers and really good blockers, but there's been nobody who, when they catch the football, you're excited and you're like a little bit afraid for the guy in front of them. Tyler Warren is an NFL tight end from that perspective of like what the position is supposed to be at its highest, which is catch and run, contested catch. The one-handed catch was amazing. That was super cool. So he's very good. And the fact that he's the team's number one receiver, I don't have a problem with. 2020. Let's talk about 2020 quickly. Penn State's number one receiver that year is Pat Freiermuth. And then, of course, he got injured and then he's done for the year. Pat was a very good football player. He was not a guy, if you want to build your offense around him, he was not a guy that's going to get you explosive plays. I think you see what he is in the NFL. He's a really, really good football player. I'm talking about, I'm a very nuanced take here. I want this to be clear. He's just not a guy that is going to get you those explosive mega plays, right? He was always going to be a guy that catches the ball and gets you 9 yards. In the offense he's in right now, that's what he does. Like his floor has been what it is basically since he was a freshman, which is that guy can play football as long as he wants. But there is a little bit of that superstar quality to Tyler Warren that they need in this offense if they're going to not have a consistent, dominant number one receiver outside, which I think they've got enough pieces, as we've seen, for them to be explosive and, call the touchdown to Amari next week, and then you don't have to worry about it if you're a Penn State fan. Brett is back. He says, does Jalen Williams' immaturity give you worry to the depth of this unit, especially with some starters struggling? No, it's not that. It's just overall, I have been concerned about the depth and the starting unit at tackle. That is Javen's play. First off, I didn't see the flag. I didn't see the penalty. I didn't see the holding because I was trying to get everything ready here for the postgame show. So I did not necessarily see those things. What concerns me is that they were toying around with him at guard at the tail end of training camp. And James Franklin said, we feel like we have a lot of answers inside. We need to find out some answers outside, meaning a tackle. Having seen Nolan Rucci, I think if he continues to work, he needs to work on his pass blocking. He can be a guy that can be a dominant run blocker, can help him that way. But I don't see an answer. And again, I didn't see Javen play, but the way that they have addressed the situation tells me it is what it is. And you've got to hope that those top two guys play well and stay healthy and give you the answers you need, because they have 3 tackles. And then I think Javen Williams is maybe a step behind that. But his overall, I don't have any issues with his long-term projection. I think he's a young guy that's still learning to play and be athletic and be a good football player. And I'm speaking wildly out of turn because I didn't watch a single snap of him specifically to give you a sense of his performance today. And we actually got to see him for a good bit, and I'm excited to do that tomorrow. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I'll throw up the graphic here. You've been staring at my sweaty face for long enough. These studio lights, the door is closed. It's hot. Subscribe right now. Code PSU1, 2 months for $1, and you'll get inside access. You can join me on the message board. What I do is I break down almost every single play from Penn State. I start early in the morning on Sunday, and it usually takes me all day. And we go through what happened on each play, why, and any notable things that happened that caused the success or the failure of the play, and then anything additional that may be funny or interesting. What I do, and I didn't do a great job recording today because of the nature of the game. So I'm going to try and give you all the video so you can watch along with me. So you can do the coach's film on Sunday like you're a football player, which is what they're going to do tomorrow. Now, some people, you got to understand, these are not criticisms. They are explanations. So don't come in with your feelings ready to be hurt, because all we're trying to do is let you in a little bit to understand football on a deeper level, because we all love it here. You've been here for an hour. There's a couple hundred people watching a postgame show at 8 p.m. after a game where Penn State won 56-0. I think you might like football as much as I do. And I just want to share what I love with you. And we'll do that tomorrow. Of course, more coming up tonight. BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. We got tons of articles. We got videos. Nate Bauer, Sean Fitz, Ryan Snyder, and Greg Pickle are doing a great job over at Beaver Stadium to give you all the information, the quotes, and the information, and the interesting comments from the people that matter inside the Beaver Stadium press room. Well, let's get to them. We'll talk to you later here on the BWI Live show.